Everyone, you've got your big bad monster at the end of your scenario. Maybe it's, I don't know, a Gorgon. And yeah, it's a wild card. Yeah, it's really tough. But the players come in and they've got so many more attacks to its attack. And then you've got the barbarian with a d12 strength using a battle axe. You got the wizard using the damage modifier on his spells. And before you know it, it's no challenge at all. It's just creamed and gone. And we know in Savage Worlds, usually you try to do layered combats, lots of mooks, stuff like that. But sometimes you just have a solo monster who lives alone and the players have to go against it. So what can we do to make that more challenging?
Savage World, one of the best games today.
Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. As always, look at the bubbles, do the stuff. Really would love your support, would love likes, subscribes, all that good stuff. So support goes directly to keeping the channel running and buying Savage World stuff. So if you want to support us and allow us to do that, then we'd be happy to have you come on board. Just look at tabletoptango.com under support and you'll find all the links you need there. So what do I want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about solo monsters and making them more interesting, or solo bosses, making them more interesting, or tougher, if tougher is what makes them more interesting. So in Savage Worlds, I've done some videos on encounter design to make encounters challenging, and they generally take the form of layering things, having lieutenants, having mooks who can help surround the players or overwhelm them to give the boss creature a chance to do their things like tests or hide behind cover and take shots at the party. All sorts of stuff you can do to make challenging encounters. But what if you really have a creature that is a solo creature that is a bad, maybe like a dragon. Let's talk about dragons, right? Solo creatures living in their horde or on their horde, and the players come in, and it'd be very easy because of a whole bunch of things: the action economy, the fact that it's a single creature, and the players are multiple players, and they can debuff the creature while they're buffing each other up, and do tests to try to put it on its back heels so that the next player. So there's all sorts of stuff the players can do from a strategy standpoint to really take on this solo foe. So what do we do to kind of increase that toughness, make it a little more of a challenge? We're not looking at just maximizing the damage the creature can do or bumping that up just to take out characters to make it feel more challenging. We're talking about really making it a challenge for players. I was inspired to do this video by Zadmar's Savage Worlds stuff blog, and he had a blog, and I'll put it down, that said "Like a Boss, Dealing with Solo Opponents," which kind of inspired me to look at this concept, this topic, and say, yeah, what does he have that's interesting, and what can I bring to the flavor that I can then use maybe in my campaigns? Because I tend to make a lot of those layered combats. And I don't just have one big bad guy, but in the fantasy campaign I'm running now, it feels like there should be on occasion just the one foe who the players are going against, and the monster in the forest, the big monster in the forest, or the big monster at the end of the cavern, whatever. And it's really hard to do that. So here's some things that I think make sense that can help out with that. So the first thing we think about is, remember that monsters and the bosses are not player characters. They don't have to be treated that way. So that means you don't have to have a monstrous ability already defined in a book. You don't need to have an edge already defined in a book. You just give the creatures what they need to be successful, to be tougher. So for example, you can make it so that the creature only takes one wound on any successful attack, no matter how many wounds are caused, which is unstoppable. But you don't have to think about it and say, oh, I looked it up and there is the unstoppable thing and therefore I can do that. You just say that's what I want to do. Let's say, for example, you have an undead kind of creature that you want to reflect damage back to the players. There's no edge or there's no monstrous ability. We're just going to make it so that if the players have a successful roll or a successful hit, they need to make a spirit roll. And if they fail their spirit roll, some of that damage gets reflected back to them. So now they're having to be careful to say, well, what am I going to do to, I'm not just going to barrel in and try to maximize my damage in case I fail that spirit roll. So that's just something the creature has. So I was creating some creatures for an adventure, and so I said to myself, okay, these creatures are immune to magic or have some resistance. Probably a -4. Oh, yeah, well, that's arcane resistance, right? But I wasn't thinking that way. It's like they need to have that. They need a breath weapon. So they're going to do a cone. 3d6 sounds good. Maybe with the raise, they're going to get that extra d6. Okay, so that looks like that's pretty good for this style of creature. Then I say, well, they'll probably have tail with spikes that they can use. And instead of just saying, oh, the tail, one swing with the tail, I say that tail has a rate of fire. Those spikes get flown out. And so now it has a rate of fire of, let's say, 4. That makes it so they have the ability to have more opportunities to hit, just like a player who's running around with a machine gun. But my creature, this is a native ability. They don't have a recoil penalty. That's just the way it is. And maybe they also have claws, right? And then they can use those as well for a second attack. We could have special abilities defined. For example, they have a wing gust that is a limited free action, so it doesn't affect their action economy. And then that works more like, hey, we want something that blows them over, knocks them down, could cause some damage. Oh yeah, that's kind of like Havoc. Maybe we look at the Havoc rules and try to balance it based on what those have. Maybe we don't. Maybe we just say, hey, it's a push, and we'll use the push rules to figure out what happens to the players. And we make that a limited free action that they just do, so that they don't have the multi-action penalty. Now you're getting more attacks. And then lastly, maybe there's something that happens to this creature when it dies, like we're talking reflecting damage back. Maybe this creature, when it dies, it explodes, and the players have to evade that explosion. So the thing gets that final hit in, even if the players are able to knock it down. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that we added to this creature that had nothing to do necessarily with specific rules, but just made it interesting. And yes, okay, I made a Draconian. Yeah, I made a Draconian for Dragonlance. That's what I did. Can't you tell? But that's what I did. So a tough Draconian, like the big boss Draconian, like an Aurak kind of thing. So that is a key thing that just remember, again, bosses aren't like player characters. They don't have to, they just have what they need. Make them tough, give them opportunities to attack in more than just, I do a claw and that's it. And if I hit, great. I do, you know, strength plus d6 damage, look at me go. Meanwhile, the players are doling out d12 plus d10s on their damage rolls. So you really have to think about that. And it's not really a balance thing. It's make them a challenge. Make them, the players, worried about attacking this creature. And, you know, that's important. So the second thing, and I alluded to it a couple times, is the action economy. These creatures, let's say we have a creature that has, you know, a claw strike, and then it has a tail strike. We could very easily just say, okay, well, tail and claw on their turn, they use both, it's a multi-action penalty. We could even say, because of the way it's a monster and it's part of who they are, they don't even have a map. If you really wanted to do that, just do it, right? It's kind of circumvents the rules a little bit, but who cares? You're trying to demonstrate that this creature is different. So, because of the action economy, the players, let's say you've got 5 players, with their taking advantage of map, and some of them will have things like that might minimize map or adds bonuses that they can put a lot of hits really quickly on a creature, and you'll find yourself with your solo back on your heels, wasting bennies on soak rolls because you're just trying to keep it in the fight, and they just keep pounding you down. So what if we had some ideas? And one of the ideas that Zadmar's site has is have the ability for this creature to use its different attacks maybe after each player character. So if player character goes, it can go and it can use its attack. Next player goes, it can go and use its attack. Is it kind of bending the rules and going around the rules? Yeah, for sure. It's not exact, but call it a house rule, right? I mean, we're trying to make these solo creatures tougher and to give them some more part of the action economy, so that when you have 5 players doing 5 attacks, this creature is getting a few more attacks. It can be more damage per attack if you want to do that, but it has an option, an opportunity to do some things. You can make sure that it also is, can do first strike or counter strike, or maybe it has a version of counter strike that if it gets hit, it can immediately react. So this creature with the tail, if it gets attacked and hit, it'll reactively swing the tail, and so it gets that attack because it was hit. You can define that. You can do that. So I think another thing related to this that's an opportunity is to create kind of these ability groups, I'll call them, within the creature. So the creature has different things that it can do. Like in our case, it has tail spikes, it has a tail hit, tail spikes, it has claws, it has some other things. And I can treat each one of those groups, let's say it has 2 claws that it can do 2 claw attacks. I could treat each one of those groups, the claws and the tail, as maybe their own creature. Each gets their own action card. So instead of having them go after each player, now they have multiple things about them that they can have an action card related. So think of something like maybe like a beholder type creature, trademark D&D, but a kind of creature that has eyes that can fire things or do things. Maybe each set of eyes is its own action card. And so now the players have to, as they're attacking it and they're killing off the creature, they're taking out these eye stalks one at a time and decreasing the amount of attacks that this thing has because it's losing action cards. That could be a lot of fun and add a lot of tension to the game versus we go against it and we just pound on it as hard as we can to try to take it down quickly. So I mentioned we can use rate of fire. Not a lot of creatures have rate of fire weapons or attacks, at least not that I've seen reading the books. Maybe I missed some, but that's something we can do. We can give it a rate of fire on things like these tail spikes. It can shoot tail spikes. It can do something else. Maybe it has a rapid fire breath weapon that's actually more like a machine gun than anything else, where it goes hoof, 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 and yeah, it's got a rate of fire versus just one big blast. Lots of stuff we can do, but the whole point is we're trying to even out the action economy. So we first give the creature the kinds of things it needs to make it powerful enough to take a hit, cause a hit, whatever, and then the action economy lets it go so that they have an opportunity to go and use those things that you've defined successfully. Now, those are some of the ideas, but there's some ideas that, some things you don't necessarily want to do, that I've fallen into these traps just trying to make my creatures tougher. First thing is don't just ratchet up the toughness or parry. Don't just say, well, players on average with this D12, D10 combo of the big bad barbarian, they're going to get on average X amount of points, I think. So therefore, instead of making this thing toughness 12, it's going to be a toughness 30. That is just frustrating because then the players are being successful in hitting it, but they just, unless they get like 4 raises, there's nothing that they can do to actually hurt it. And I exaggerate. If they can't get a bunch of raises, they just can't do anything, and then it just becomes a slog, and it's not fun at all. So I really recommend that you don't just ratchet up the toughness. There's a thing in D&D where some game master advice, like YouTube channels I watch, they say, oh, well, while things are happening, I'm upping the hit points or I'm lowering the hit points depending on how tough the counter is. We don't have that option in Savage Worlds, right? We can't just go, well, I add an extra 30 hit points because the player's got a good hit in and they'll never know. The players know this thing has 4 wounds, unless it's got a special ability or 3 wounds, special ability where it has 4 wounds. Obviously, and not just because it's a large creature, but because it's just that much tougher to kill. And that maybe that's a thing, I think there's a monstrous ability just around that. But again, I don't care. I'm just going to define that thing and use it. Second thing is don't lean too heavily into invulnerabilities. So, being invulnerable to something is a monstrous ability that you can define. It's very easy to fall in a trap to say, my players are all running around with melee weapons that pierce and cut. So this thing is invulnerable to piercing and cutting weapons, only bludgeoning weapons. And so now the players have to attack it by fists or pick up improvised weapons in an area and beat it up. That's frustrating too. it's really good to have it invulnerable to certain things that the players have to work around. But if you make it too many things, or you make it just too tough because you're playing into exactly what the characters have as far as their abilities go, and so you've got something that's a 1-to-1 against what they are, that's kind of mean, right? I think that it's good to have some things that the players can discover. Like, yeah, maybe it is immune to slashing weapons, but it's not immune to something else. It's the players can immediately recognize that, oh, my slashing weapon's not doing enough damage. Maybe I go to my backup. And so that invulnerability is fine. I said it was kind of maybe not, but that invulnerability is fine. Invulnerable to all physical attacks or all ranged weapons or all magic, or then it starts getting a little tougher. So, but hey, if you think that's what's going to make that creature the thing that makes the players antsy, then throw that out the window and go ahead and make it invulnerable to what you need to. Again, give it what it needs to have to be the right creature for the thing. A third thing is, be careful. Now, I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth. I said just give the creatures what they need, kind of house rule some interesting things as far as action economy goes, but be careful to have things that are too mind-bending, too broken, breaking the rules left, right, up, and down, just because you're the game master and you got fiat. But so, for example, if something has a real breath weapon and it's breathing, and breath weapons generally get an evasion, maybe you want to keep that just because the players are expecting it. They want the character has a high agility, or the players who kind of invested in something that allows that. Well, now they even get a little bonus for that, and so they take advantage of that. And if you make it too crazy against the rules, then players may also get frustrated. And they're like, the world doesn't have any semblance of consistency because you've decided that for only this creature, only this creature can do can use a free action to teleport behind somebody, free action to attack, and then a free action to teleport somewhere else. And then it gets to have its chance to do a normal attack. That probably is going to get some people like a little upset, because it's really, why don't you just make it so the creature doesn't have to use any attacks? Everything's a free action for it. Why not, right? Because you're making it that way anyway. So be careful not to lean too heavy into bending the rules just for your sake, because players will see that as, why can't I do that? Have multiple free actions to do XYZ, and then also have multiple, not have a limited free action or a limited action, have these things be not limited, and then I can do as many as I want because your creatures can. There's a balance, right? And I tend to lean towards the side of, well, that's fine, but this is just what this creature can do. But I also try to make sure that I'm not too crazy, because that would upset people. Last thing, you want your solo creature to be tough, give the players challenge, make them think. But if the players think well and they strategize well and they do a good job, yeah, it may just die in a round. It may just die quickly. And that itself can be very exciting for the players, that they took down the big creature quickly. Now, if that happens all the time, then maybe it's not as much fun, but sometimes it is just fun to wallop this thing to the point where it's back on its heels right away. And it's just fun to say, hey, this thing is not as tough as it thought it was. We showed it. We came in, we kicked some butt, and that's what we did. So that can be fun too. So don't get too bent out of shape if they do come in and they wipe up the floor with it on occasion. That's just sometimes part of the fun. So give the creature what it needs to have. They can be special. They don't have to be existing monstrous abilities. They don't have to be edges. They can just be something that's special for the creature. It may map to an edge, but you don't care. You're just trying to define what makes sense for this creature. Things like rate of fire, things like multiple attacks available, things like our gust of wind that our creature had that was a free action, so they didn't have to waste an attack on it because it's something they could do all the time. Yeah. Action economy, very big deal. The players are coming in. You're just one. They're 5. They're 4. Whatever. make it so that the creature has some ability to work within the action economy. It could be they go after they use their monstrous abilities or their attacks after each character goes. We may create these groups that now they have their own action cards for the different parts of the creature. So, and then of course we want to leverage rate of fire so that we can, throw a lot of damage or frenzy or a type of frenzy, what have you, to kind of impact the amount of things we can do when it's our chance to do things. And then I mentioned some things just don't ratchet up the toughness. It's just frustrating for sure. Don't make the creature so nothing can touch it just so that it doesn't get killed. And then bend the rules. I'd say even break the rules, but don't blow them so far out of the water with the torpedo that the players now don't trust that the world has some semblance of consistency within it. So anyway, those are some ideas that I was inspired by a blog post to think about, and I'm going to think about taking advantage of those. Maybe I can step back a little bit from the encounter design, the layered encounter design, and I can throw some just big bad monsters that they they'll run into the Balrog now, and it's tough and it's scary, and it's not just a wild card that they can beat up and 5 against 1 and too bad they're gone. So anyway, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. Again, look at the bubbles, do the stuff. Please support, like, subscribe, all those good things. It makes a difference. I really like seeing subscriptions go up. They make me happy. And when I hit milestones, I like to do a live stream. So I got a long way for the next milestone. So subscribe if you can. You don't have to watch them all, but subscribe. That'd be awesome. So anyway, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. We will talk to you later. Bye.
Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World, Benny, enhance my play. Savage World, different setting any day.